Hello, my name is Trina, and I am from Grounded Magic Astrology. I am so glad to have you here. This is my first video. I am going to talk about the full moon in Sagittarius today, and I'm very excited that this is my first video. It is a beautiful new moon, or I'm sorry, full moon to talk about. We did have a new moon in Sagittarius that began this cycle last year, somewhere around December 19th or 20th of 2025. So if you journal like I do, and you go back and read anywhere from 2 weeks before and after that date, so pretty much the month of December, you're going to see kind of what things were going on for you, and that is what is culminating for you now. And in a way, this video is a culmination of it for me. So welcome. I also will put in the description box below where you can book a reading with me to get your own chart reading to see where things like this full moon are happening for you and what they may be activating in your chart, especially if they're touching a personal planner for you. Typically, you'll hear these big, um, to-dos being made about certain transits and certain moons and stuff, and then it goes by and you're like, that didn't really, land for me. And that's likely because it didn't aspect your chart. Usually, if there's something happening, it's because it's aspecting you in a personal way. But to preface this chart that we're about to go over for this full moon, I also want to talk about how on May 1st, we had this sort of, I would say it was the first point in a new 19-year sort of cycle. And that's when we had the full moon in Scorpio, which is bringing all of the gunk up to be talked about, to be looked at, to be digested. I know personally I was having very deep, very intimate, very vulnerable conversations over the month of May, even before then, leading up to then. And then on May 6th, Pluto stationed retrograde. So now we're going back in Aquarius, right? So we're going back through those psychological depths. We're looking at the things that we just went through, the conversations we've been having, and we're digging deep to see what needs to be transformed from that stone. And this is going to go on through October. So there's that. And then on May 16th, we had a new moon in Taurus, conjunct Mercury Cazimi, with Egal and Ceres both there as well. And this was really about planting new seeds of intention to uh, with Taurus, it's like a grounded, to be grounded, to be true to yourself, to honor your body and to honor what your body wants and needs and desires. And she's the Empress in the tarot, right? So she doesn't chase, she attracts. And so there's all of this clarity coming in around our body and how sick we are sometimes with what we allow in our lives from other people. So when we're stressed out, stress and grief and all of these things, if they're constant parts of our lives, it can make us very sick, especially if we're not regulating our nervous systems, which I'm very excited about all the Gemini stuff because that is what that's about for me. Uranus and Gemini is about liberating the nervous system and us understanding the frameworks and kind of how we're made and how to kind of process our emotions. I really do love that. And so at that new moon, you probably planted seeds, or whether you did it intentionally or not, there were seeds planted in the Taurus area of your chart. So where is that for you? Because that's the new moon, and that was opposite where the full moon in Scorpio had been. So it was taking what was dug up from Scorpio, what was we need to look at that was still holding us back, so that by the time the new moon got here in Taurus, we'd be ready to step into and embody. Taurus embody what we're here to embody. And then now on the 31st, it kind of culminates the end of the month with this beautiful blue moon, the second full moon this month, the full moon in Sagittarius, which is really about speaking your truth. This is about go big or go home energy. Okay. I did create a chart for it that I really want to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and give me just 1 second here. I want to share my screen with you. All right. And so if you look at this chart, what I love about it, a lot of what I've been teaching since I guess it was 2023, my friend Liz and I were doing a podcast back at that time, and Venus was kind of chasing Mars through Leo, and she got tired of chasing Mars and she started stopped. And then she went retrograde. And what we talked about at that time was how this was about us no longer chasing. In Leo, we want what's authentic. We don't want to chase you. We don't want you out of obligation. We're tired. Like Leo is about love. It's about the inner child. It's about warmth and generosity and authenticity and integrity. And if those, chasing something, that's not any of those things. And so she did this retrograde. And I talked about it being this sort of rebranding with the roots. You were going to start sort of living more rooted from your own heart and your own center. And so a lot of people have done that. And I think the state of the world and the political environment and all of the things going on have sort of helped that and aided that along, right? But what I love about this chart, because when we talk about all of this going on with the masculine and the feminine, I'm not talking about men versus women. I'm talking about in general, because we all have the traits of yin and we all have the traits of yang. But in the patriarchy, which I have said, the Saturn Neptune conjunction at zero Aries was the beginning of the fall, the true fall of the patriarchy and the red pill culture and the toxic masculinity, right? But we have to be honest about the feminine energy as well. In Taurus, at a 13-degree rising chart, which you can see right here, is a beautiful chart to have because 13 is the number of the divine feminine and it breaks down 204, which is a foundation. And for Taurus, this is your body. What are you embodying? Are you embodying your expansion? Are you embodying? See, people want to manifest, they want to do these rituals outside of themselves, but really you're meant to be closing your eyes and pulling it to you, using the womb energy to pull it to you, right? Cancer, that womb energy. And so I love this so much. And I like that Mars is close by, although it does let us know that Mars and Taurus can speak to the suppression of the feminine. So historically, women have had to be, and women and children, right? We've had to be quiet. Our opinions don't matter. Our voices don't matter. We're to shut up. We're to cook. We're to clean. We're to bear children. These types of things, right? So Mars and Taurus is this like slow rage that the body, it's going to make you sick. If you are resentful and you're choosing that sort of life and you're living those same cycles over and over, they can make you physically sick. And this is where I like Mars being trine the South Node, however, and sextile over to the North Node and Hecate, which we're going to talk about a little bit here in a little bit. Um, I do have a lot of asteroids and fixed stars in this chart, and I want to talk about them as well. But first, I want to keep it really simple. So Taurus rising chart, number of the divine feminine, Mars is there conjunct at the number 9. The 9 is spiritual closure, endings, cycles. Okay, so there's something about our embodiment. There's something about the feminine power, pulling that back to us and rising up and taking action from a place that is authentic and that is rooted in who we truly are and what our bodies really want and need at this time. And it's also okay to let yourself desire because Taurus is also about sensual pleasure. So make sure that you are not skipping sensual pleasure as one of the things you allow yourselves to experience in this lifetime, whether that's a cup of coffee on the porch, whether that's making love to your spouse, whether that's spending time with a child, whatever those simple pleasures are for you, those tangible, everyday pleasures. Make sure you're taking action to be rooted in those right now as well. What I love about this chart as well is the Gemini energy is in the second house. What is the second house? Well, yes, it is your personal resources, your money, that sort of thing, but it's also your values. And so with Uranus there, especially when we don't even look at anything else, with just Uranus there, there's this sort of liberating quality where you're being liberated from worrying about what everybody else thinks because what's true to you is what's true to you. And you're ready to align with those values. You've collected enough information, and now Sagittarius is saying, what does the information mean? Okay, so when you look at the Gemini second house with Ceres there at 0, Ceres is the mothering, the nurturing energy. She is conjunct Sadhana at 1. Sadhana speaks to betrayal and how we can go through the worst, horrible, awful things and come out the other side more beautiful for it. And with those two being conjunct Uranus, there's some sort of liberation from in the nervous system that has been holding us back for a while now because of the frameworks that we have in our mind. Gemini is the mind, the lower mind. So there's something being rewritten, being liberated from the lower primal human part of our minds. We're being upgraded in that way. And especially with the asteroid child so close to the sun and Aldebaran, who are part of the full moon. So the asteroid child represents our innocence, the inner child archetype, which is the nervous system. The inner child is the nervous system. So you can use those interchangeably, whatever, if you want the scientific version or the poetic version, right? Um, but there's just this sort of cleansing, this deep cleansing that's available to us right now for our inner child and for our nervous system so that we can expand our idea of what's possible for ourselves. And so I really love this energy. And then we have the sun without a Baron. And I do have notes, so bear with me because I did write a few notes on what these fixed stars were. With Aldebaran being conjunct the sun and the sun being like your life force and what motivates you out of bed every day, right? And then you've got Aldebaran, which is about courage and leadership and triumph over evil. So this is really about triumphing over the old frameworks that your ego likes to stay stuck in, the fear frameworks, right? We're getting over those. And then with Mercury at 28 Gemini, sextile over to Chiron and Persephone and Companion and Eris, all in the Aries 12th house. This is really speaking to if you communicate honestly right now from a grounded, present level framework that isn't rooted in the shame of your childhood wounding and your trauma, really beautiful healing can happen. That's a sextile. That's a really beautiful energy. And that means that the moon sign is trine over to those same that same area. So at the front of Aries. So both sides are covered and it's just a really beautiful energy. So if you need Aries is about courage, it's in the 12th house. So maybe what you're lacking is the courage to have a conversation, right? So maybe this with Sagittarius being about expansion and speaking your truth, maybe this full moon gives you a boost to help you find that courage to speak your truth. But that is such a beautiful energy. And then when you look at what rules the chart, it's Venus. Well, Venus is in Cancer in the third house at 14 degrees, and she's right there with Psyche and Hygeia and Aphrodite. So, first of all, I love that Venus is ruling the chart because I talked about you embodying what's right for you. And with it being Venus in Cancer, you're only going to bond with people who are emotionally reciprocal and emotionally safe. With Psyche, there, we're talking about the human journey back to the soul. So, these people have to feel, you have to feel a soul resonance with them to keep them in your life right now. And then with Hygeia, it's talking about especially Hygeia is exact Aphrodite at 15. And Aphrodite is a very surface level love and attraction at the top of it. And so I feel like this is Hygeia is cleansing the way we bond, excuse me, cleansing our deep psyche over past relationship trauma, especially because it's in Cancer, like familial patterns will be broken. You know, if you fell for the same kind of person that your parents did or people like your parents, that sort of thing, that's going to be a lot easier to not do going forward, I feel like. But Hygeia is, it's wanting to us to take initiative and to be discerning over who's in our lives right now. And are they in there because of the way it looks or because it really resonates, you know? So keep that in mind. And Jupiter's here too with Sappho, and they're exact at 23, which adds up to 5, which is some sort of change, right? And Jupiter rules this full moon from that house. And the third house is all about our perspective, our community, the people around us, the conversations we're having, the lens we're viewing things through. And so keep that in mind too, because it's almost like there's this deep restructuring going on. We're sort of in the womb when it comes to relationships right now. We're being cleansed and shown a different way to relate and a different way to connect. And with Venus and Hygeia and Aphrodite and Psyche, they're all square over to Bride and Saturn and Pallas and Vesta and all of that in Aries. And so what does that mean? That means that as we are in the soup and in the womb and sort of, you know, going through this sort of cleansing process, there's some tension because we're trying to build, you know, Saturn is conjunct Bride. Saturn is the container that holds what we desire, and Bride is our receptivity. How can we receive? And so Saturn is trying to get us to widen our container, our self concept, widen our self concept to see ourselves as worthy of receiving, right? And so that's part of the work right now, shifting your third house where Venus is mindset, you know, philosophy, lens that you're viewing the world through. Not really philosophy, that's more nine tuts, but the lens that you're viewing the world through, and that's square over to Saturn and Bride. So where are you still holding yourself back, limiting yourself by the way you view yourself? There's something with Aries, all that Aries in the 12th house of the unconscious, that there's something that needs to come forward to show you where you're still not seeing yourself correctly, where you're still not giving yourself enough credit. And so keep that in mind because there's something there about not overgiving and making sure that you're in your sovereignty, But with all that Cancer squaring it, you can't be sovereign and not soft. This is not about loud empowerment. This is about soft sovereignty. So that's another tension that's in there as well. And then with Jupiter conjunct Sappho, and Sappho being this like poetic genius, right? And this sort of example of female empowerment that was poetic and soft and beautiful. And so I really love that, especially because there's an opposition between Jupiter and Sappho with the midheaven and Flora in Capricorn. And so this is letting us know that the secret to getting what we want Capricorn wise, right, our larger picture in the ninth house, that the flora is abundance conjunct the midheaven. So what do we want? We want to be seen and known and build a legacy for ourselves. That's what we all want. And so that is possible right now. That opposition, you're being exactly mirrored what you need to get there. You're not, there's not a lot of confusion anymore. There's clarity and there's fear of that clarity, right? That's really what it is at this point. So keep that all in mind. You know, with Jupiter ruling this full moon, beautiful gifts could come from this. And then Leo is the fourth house. There's not a whole lot going on there, but the sun does rule Leo and is part of this full moon, which is again, for so long now, it's been about family karma and closing out cycles of the family karma. And now that Uranus and everything is moving into Gemini, it's about, okay, that's done now. We're done healing. We're done doing the shadow work. Now it's time to build the mental frameworks that we need to move on to the next part of life now that we can put that behind us, right? So that's what a lot of this energy is, in my opinion. And then we have, you know, with it being the fourth house and the sun in the fourth house, it's just home, family, patterns. So right now you're recognizing patterns where you weren't allowed to shine at home, where you weren't allowed to be yourself, where you weren't allowed to be authentic, but you want that now. And so you can build that now yourself. And with the fifth house having the South Node and Eros together, with Eros being our sexual desire, our our primitive sort of drives, this is about letting go of that more primitive, primal reptilian sort of way that we connect with one another, with pleasure, with sex, with even with parenting. Fifth house, sort of getting rid of the old way of doing it, and especially with Adonis there, because Adonis is the youthful masculine beauty, right? It's about charisma. And so with it being in Virgo, I would say that, we're ready to, um, Virgo is not about purity in the sense of being a prude at all. That's not what it's about. It's about connecting with somebody in that way for the right reason. It's not about being overbearing. It's about being genuine in the serving that you're doing. And in that fifth house, again, sex, pleasure, all of those things. And Mars is trying over to the South Node and Eros, and sextile over to the North Node and Hecate in the 11th house. And so what this is telling me is that we have a chance right now, Mars in the first house, to embody what it is we want for ourselves and our life and let go of what is standing in the way of that, which is the old, you know, surface level way of connecting with people and finding pleasure and joy in life, to Pisces 11th house, to finding a soul tribe, to finding somebody that wants to build. Hecate is the crossroads. The North Node is what we're hungry for. Pisces, surrender, flow, in the house of communities. It just reminds me of like just a total hippie calming vibe. I love it. A full moon in Sagittarius with Hecate in the North Node in Pisces. Um, that is a square, by the way. So there would be tension there, but I do love the idea of the Pisces being in the 11th house, the North Node and Hecate being there. The crossroads being the 11th house is also your bigger hopes and dreams and wishes. It's also ruled by Jupiter, and Sappho's conjunct Jupiter. So do you want to play small, or do you want to grow and expand? With the Sagittarius being the eighth house here, this is what's yours versus what's mine. It's merging our things together, whether we're merging actual living, you're moving in with me, I'm moving in with you, we're on each other's accounts. It's when we share sort of resources and assets, but it's also where we share our deepest intimacy and our deepest vulnerabilities with one another. And so with a full moon there's some sort of culmination, with it being an eighth house, a theme around that. There could be an inheritance theme for some of you, depending on where it's happening in your chart. Some sort of passive income could be coming through for you. And then, with Antares conjunct the moon as well, Antares is about, just a second, I have a notes here and I don't want to say the wrong thing. Antares is about learning the difference between obsession and understanding. So sometimes we want to understand something so much that we can become obsessed with. This is Antares. And so the moon conjunct Antares is saying, so Gemini just collects information, right? Collects information, collects information. The Sagittarius on the other says, okay, what is all this information good for? Like what is the meaning of it? So whereas Gemini just collects the information, Sagittarius wants to give that information meaning. And so it can become, when the moon is by Taurus, it can become sort of obsessive. And I would say because Groom and Union are there, this could be an obsession more on the masculine part of ourselves, the part that feels like we should jump up and take action. But with Lilith there, there's a part of us that either still feels exiled, like we shouldn't speak our truth, or that is done not speaking our truth and we're just going to speak it, right? Because we're not going to be held back anymore. So that's a possibility as well. But again, these are eighth house themes, so these aren't really light themes at all. However, the aspects that the moon and everything is making are pretty good. I love that it's sextile over to Pluto retrograde and Juno in Aquarius. Now, this is the 10th house. So this is your public image, your visibility, how you're showing up in the world, on the world stage. And with Pluto retrograde there and Juno there, this is about transforming what sacred contracts look like for you. Are they rooted in freedom? Are they rooted in, individual growth and evolution? Can you love somebody deeply and have those roots, but let them have wings as well? And so that's a lot of the Aquarian energy here. I want my lover to be my best friend. Like, not just, you don't want to just say that, like, you really want them to be your best friend. And so that's what a lot of this energy is about. However, with Pluto being retrograde through October, Juno will be going retrograde June 5th at 5:55 p.m. at 11 degrees of Aquarius, and also be retrograde, I believe, through October. So there's a lot of shifts of going inward and looking at the connections in our lives, the ones that we've cut out, the ones that we're entertaining now, and seeing if we made the right choices, if maybe we need to talk to somebody to bring them back in our life, cut somebody out that we thought we didn't have to. So all of this can be going on, especially as it relates to how they make you on the public stage. Like, do they make you look good? Are they proud of you? Do they support your growth and your evolution? Because if they don't, they're not the one for you, right? And then especially when you look at that North Node at Hecate in the Pisces, 11th house with the Jupiter ruling it from the third, or even if you say Neptune ruling it from the 12th, right? But there's still a spiritual community that you're meant to be a part of. And it doesn't have to be this new age woo-woo stuff. It doesn't even have to be spiritual. Just find a community that is full of compassion and empathy and make a decision to be part of that community and to not settle for anything else. There's so much packed into this Aries 12th house. And the 12th house, like I said, is the unconscious. And so the toxic masculine, which can be the shadow of Aries, is what is holding a lot of us back, a lot of us back. Because the feminine, she can stop suppressing all she wants, but every time we do that, we put ourselves in danger and we know that. So it's really hard for us to go first. We do it. We're awful brave ourselves, right? But the masculine really needs to step up and really needs to do this work. And so that's what this 12th house is showing us. Neptune is getting rid of the illusions, right? Vesta is, what are you holding on to? Vesta is the hearth, the home fire, keeping it burning. And with Pallas there's something you've been holding on to regarding themes of overdependence, impulsivity, instinct, Aries type of energy. There's something in that pattern that you've been holding on to that's coming to the surface. Pallas Athena is strategic wisdom. She is pattern recognition. And so you're being shown what you've been holding on to that you need to let go of in order to, Saturn's right after Pallas, right? Conjunct Pallas, and widen your container to hold what it is that you're trying to hold. And with Bride there, yes, Saturn wants you to receive. He wants to grow bigger for you so that you can hold more. But he needs you to be responsible enough to regulate yourself, to choose yourself. Because how can you be trusted to continue to choose yourself once you're given something if you're not choosing yourself before it's here, right? So where's the consistency, before it shows up? And then Eris is there as well. So we're definitely not going to get what we want because Eris is so close to companion. We're not going to get what we want without speaking the truth. There's no more distortion allowed, right? We've had Eris and Aries for a while spitting truth about toxic masculinity for quite a while now. This stuff is not new. These are fights we've been having, right? And now Persephone's there and Companion's there. Of course, Chiron is there. And so there's something about us looking at the people, the friends, the people in our lives, and are they willing to go through this, Persephone type journey with us to heal? And I think that that's really possible right now, like I said, with the Mercury being sextile those, and with the moon and all that being trine over to the Aries. So there's so much opportunity for such deep healing with that Cancer third house, Venus, Hygeia, Aphrodite, Psyche, Sappho. If you're just honest about how you feel, there's just so much goodness available to you right now, but you are going to have to be honest and you are going to have to choose yourself. There's really no other way around it. I'm going to stop my share now. I hope this has been helpful for someone. I'm going to try to come at you each week with, what transit of the week I think is really important to pay attention to. That's all I'm going to say for right now. I may change that later in the future, but I have to start somewhere. And I really wanted to talk about this full moon in Sagittarius. I think it's a really important one. Um, I think the stuff in Aries is asking you to really believe in yourself, to have courage. You don't have to be over independent, right? The Cancer stuff is saying have conversations, collaborate with the right people, but be courageous. Reach out, talk to people, connect with people. The stuff in Aquarius, Pluto in Aquarius is about us learning how to connect on a more conscious level so that we're not just primitive brains or trying, 4-year-old children in adult bodies trying to figure it out. So again, if you want a reading to see how this is playing out in your own birth chart, and I do offer after that one, if you want, I offer an inner child reading and a who you're becoming reading as well. Those are not mandatory at all. You can just get a basic birth chart reading if that's what you're looking for. And I also will put any social media or anything else that I have there below. And I hope you have a beautiful, blessed blue moon.